You can run 3 miles every morning, sweat through a spin class, feel genuinely exhausted, and still watch the number on the scale refuse to move. If that has ever happened to you, you probably assumed you weren't working hard enough. Here's the uncomfortable truth. The problem usually isn't your effort in the gym. It's that exercise was never the main lever in the first place. Let me define the one idea everything else depends on. Your body weight and, more specifically, your body composition, how much of you is fat versus muscle, are governed by something called energy balance. Energy balance just means the difference between the calories you take in through food and drink and the calories your body spends over the course of a day. Take in more than you spend, and the surplus gets stored largely as fat. Spend more than you take in, and your body dips into its reserves to cover the shortfall. That's it. That's the entire accounting system your fat cells run on. Now here's the claim I want to defend for the next several minutes, stated plainly so you don't have to wait for it. When it comes to changing your body, the priority order is diet first, rest second, exercise third. Diet beats exercise, not because exercise is worthless, we'll get to its real job, but because the thing that decides your body composition is energy balance, and food controls energy balance far more powerfully than any workout ever could. That probably sounds backwards, so I'm going to show you exactly why it's true. Here's what you'll get from this video. First, why energy balance, and not your workouts, is what actually decides fat and muscle. Second, how to fix your nutrition from the ground up, using a 6-step order that most people get completely out of sequence. And third, the important limits of the rule, because diet beats exercise does not mean skip exercise, and I'll show you exactly when the priority flips. Let's go in order. Why energy balance beats your workouts. To see why food outranks exercise, you have to open up the calorie side of the equation and look at where your energy actually goes each day. The total is called your TDEE, Total Daily Energy Expenditure, which is just a fancy label for every calorie you burn in 24 hours. And it's made of 4 parts. The first and biggest is your BMR, your basal metabolic rate, the energy your body spends simply keeping you alive. Your beating heart, your breathing, your brain, the constant maintenance of every cell. You burn this even lying perfectly still all day. For most people, it's roughly 60 to 70% of the total. That's the giant slice, and notice you have almost no direct control over it. The second part has an ugly name but a beautiful meaning: NEAT, or non-exercise activity thermogenesis. That's the energy you spend on all movement that isn't deliberate exercise. Walking to the mailbox, standing, fidgeting, carrying groceries, climbing stairs, pacing while you're on the phone. Here's the surprise. For most people, NEAT burns more calories than their actual workouts do. All those small, unglamorous movements add up to more than the hour you spend sweating. The third part is exercise itself, the run, the lifting session, the class. And the fourth is DIT, the diet-induced thermogenesis, which is the energy your body spends digesting and processing the food you eat. Protein notably costs quite a lot to digest. Now look at where exercise lands. It's typically the smallest or second smallest slice of the 4. A hard 45-minute workout might burn something in the range of 300 to 400 calories for many people. That sounds like a lot until you realize a single muffin and a flavored coffee can erase it in about 4 minutes of eating. The math is lopsided. You spend an hour earning the deficit and 90 seconds spending it. But the arithmetic isn't even the deepest problem. Here's the part almost nobody tells you. Your appetite fights back. When you burn more energy through exercise, your body notices the drain and, in many people, quietly turns up hunger to refill it. This is called appetite compensation. You finish a long workout, you feel ravenous, you eat a little more the rest of the day, often without consciously deciding to, and that extra food cancels out much of what you just burned. Studies tracking people who start exercise programs repeatedly find that they lose less weight than the pure calorie math predicts, and appetite compensation is a major reason why. So stack these facts together. Exercise is the small slice. Your body raises hunger to offset that small slice. And food, sitting on the intake side of the ledger, can add hundreds of calories in seconds. This is why energy balance, and therefore diet, decides your body composition, while exercise plays a supporting role. It's not an opinion about willpower. It's where the calories live. That's the why behind the priority order. Now let's talk about what to actually do with it. Fixing nutrition from the ground up. If diet is the main lever, the obvious question is what to change first. And this is where most advice falls apart. People throw tips at you in random order. Cut sugar, count macros, avoid seed oils, try this superfood. But nutrition is like building a house. The foundation has to be solid before the upper floors mean anything. Obsessing over your cooking oil while you're eating 1,000 calories too many is like choosing curtains for a house with no walls. So here is a 6-step order, built from the bottom up. Each step should be reasonably stable before the next one starts to matter. Step 1 is vegetables. Aim for around 400 grams a day. That's roughly the amount of fruit and vegetables combined that the World Health Organization recommends, at least 400 grams per day, to lower the risk of non-communicable disease. Why start here? Because vegetables are high in fiber and water and low in calories, which means they fill you up without flooding you with energy. Getting this in place quietly makes every later step easier, because a full stomach argues less with your discipline. Step 2 is calorie management, getting your total energy intake roughly in line with your goal. This is the single most powerful lever for changing body composition, because it directly controls energy balance. To do it, you estimate your TDEE from your age, sex, body size, and activity level. Plenty of free calculators do this. And then, if your goal is fat loss, you eat around 80 to 90% of that number. Notice the caution, 80 to 90%, not 50. A gentle deficit. Slash your intake too hard, and your body responds by burning muscle for fuel, slowing your metabolism and setting you up to rebound. Slow is not just kinder. It works better. Step 3 is your PFC balance. PFC stands for protein, fat, and carbohydrate, the 3 macronutrients that supply all your calories. A sensible starting point. Protein at roughly 2 grams per kilogram of body weight, fat around 50 grams a day as a floor, and carbohydrate filling the rest. Protein matters most to get right here, and I'll explain why in a moment. Step 4 is the quality of those macronutrients. Not just how much fat, but which kind. Not just how many carbs, but how refined. For example, shifting some of your fat toward the omega-3 fats found in oily fish, which are anti-inflammatory, and choosing less refined carbohydrates like whole grains and root vegetables, which raise your blood sugar more gently than white flour and sugar. Step 5 is the processing level of your food. A simple test. The fewer the ingredients and the more you can picture the original plant or animal, the less processed it is. Heavily processed foods, the kind with long ingredient lists you can't pronounce, have been linked in large studies to higher risk of obesity and metabolic disease, partly because they pack in lots of calories with little nutrition and leave you unsatisfied, so you eat more. And step 6, the very top floor, is cooking method. Things like favoring gentler, lower temperature cooking over charring everything at high heat. This is the fine-tuning, and it genuinely matters, but only once the 5 layers beneath it are in place. Now, why does this order exist at all, and why do we so reliably overeat the wrong things? The most useful explanation is the idea of evolutionary mismatch. For the overwhelming majority of human history, our ancestors were hunter-gatherers, living in a world where calorie-dense food was rare and precious. Fat and sugar meant survival, so evolution wired us to crave them intensely and to eat them whenever we could. That instinct was perfectly tuned to a world of scarcity. But our physiology hasn't changed in the last few thousand years. While our food environment has been utterly transformed, we now live surrounded by cheap, engineered, hyperpalatable food designed to hit exactly those ancient cravings. The mismatch between a scarcity-adapted body and an abundance-filled world is a big part of why we overeat energy-dense food almost automatically. That's also why the roadmap is foundation first. Your instincts push you toward the top of the pyramid, the tweaks and the trendy details, while the real leverage sits at the bottom in vegetables and total calories. Fix the foundation, and the cravings become manageable. Chase the details first, and you're decorating a house with no walls. The limits. When the rule flips, everything so far could easily be misheard as, exercise is a waste of time. It isn't, and this section is where I fence the claim in properly, because a rule without its conditions gets dangerous. Start with the biggest condition, bulking. Everything I've said assumes your goal is fat loss or staying lean. But if your goal is to build significant muscle to bulk, the priority order actually flips, and exercise moves up the ranking. Here's why. To build new muscle tissue, your body needs 2 things, a training stimulus that signals grow, and surplus energy and raw materials to actually construct the tissue. Muscle synthesis, the process of building muscle, happens most effectively when you're in a calorie surplus, eating more than you spend. A common target for gaining is around 1.1 to 1.2 times your TDEE. And in that surplus state, if you don't train hard, all that extra energy has nowhere useful to go, so it's stored as fat instead of building muscle. So when you're bulking, exercise isn't optional support. It's the thing that decides whether the surplus becomes muscle or flab. The priority genuinely reverses. That leads straight to the second condition, and it's one of the most misunderstood ideas in all of fitness. You cannot efficiently lose fat and build meaningful muscle at the same time. People chase both at once constantly, and they're fighting themselves. Look at why. Building muscle requires a calorie surplus, more energy coming in than going out. Losing fat requires a calorie deficit, more energy going out than coming in. Those are opposite states of energy balance. You cannot be in a surplus and a deficit in the same moment. It's a contradiction, not a difficulty. So what does that mean in practice? When you're in a deficit, cutting fat, the realistic best case for your muscle is maintenance, holding on to what you already have. That's your ceiling. And it's a worthy goal, not a consolation prize. And this is precisely where exercise earns its keep during a cut. When you're eating less, your body is looking for tissue to break down for fuel, and it will happily burn muscle along with fat. Resistance training, lifting against a load, sends a loud signal that says, this muscle is in use, keep it. The muscle groups you actually train get preferentially preserved. So during fat loss, you don't lift to build, you lift to protect what you have while the diet does the fat-burning work. That's the true role of exercise on a cut, and it's a crucial one. Put the conditions together and the full picture is honest. Diet outranks exercise for fat loss because energy balance decides fat, and food controls energy balance. But exercise still matters enormously. It protects your muscle in a deficit, and it becomes the priority when you're building in a surplus. And because building and cutting demand opposite energy states, the smart move is to separate them in time. Run a building phase, then a cutting phase, rather than smearing both together and getting neither. Your takeaway checklist. Let me pull the whole thing into something you can act on without rewatching. First, energy balance comes first, always. Your body composition is decided by calories in versus calories out. That's the lever, and food moves it far more than workouts do, because exercise is the small slice of your daily burn, and your appetite quietly rises to refill what you spend. Second, know your TDEE. Estimate your total daily energy expenditure from your age, sex, body size, and activity. And remember, it's mostly your resting metabolism and your everyday movement. Your NEAT, not your gym time. For fat loss, aim to eat around 80 to 90% of that number, a gentle deficit, not a crash. Third, treat exercise as support, not the main event, with one honest exception. During fat loss, its job is to preserve muscle while your diet creates the deficit. During a building phase, when you're deliberately in a surplus, it becomes the priority that turns extra calories into muscle instead of fat. And because you can't build and cut at once, pick one goal at a time. Fourth, fix nutrition from the bottom up in order. Vegetables around 400 grams. Then get your total calories in line. Then set your protein, fat, and carbohydrate. Then improve the quality of each. Then lower how processed your food is. And finally, refine your cooking method. Lower steps before upper steps, foundation before curtains. If you take nothing else away, take this. Stop asking your workouts to do a job your kitchen was always meant to do. Build the foundation first, and everything above it starts working. If you want to go deeper on any single floor of that pyramid, how to actually set your protein, or how to structure a fat loss phase, there are related videos you can explore whenever you're ready. But you already have the whole structure. The order is the insight. Start at the bottom, and start today. Thanks for watching. If you like health claims explained with the reasoning and the citations behind them, consider subscribing to Why Cited. The papers are always linked below so you can check the sources yourself. And there's plenty more here to keep exploring whenever you're curious.